For this drawing of Ariana Grande, I'm going to show you how I was able to create a realistic looking skin using graphite and charcoal powder. Coming up. As you can see, I've gone ahead to shade the nose, the eyes, the mouth, but for this tutorial, we're going to be facing the cheek. Now, many of you don't do this, but you want to first observe your reference photo closely. Looking at this reference photo now, we want to mark the highlights. And as you can see, the highlights are just below the eyes. Next is the shadows. The shadowed areas are here and here. So this means that no matter how dark I shade, these areas will still remain darker. These are the things that you want to think about and plan out before you actually put the pencil to the paper. So now for the real shading. I'll start first with my HB pencil. Now you may be wondering, why did this maniac decide to start with the HB pencil? Well, it's because the HB pencil is a light pencil and I need the first shading, which will serve as the base layer, to be light. This is also the reason why I am holding my pencil toward the middle or the end of the pencil. It is still because, like I said, I don't want to darken up the skin at this point. See what happens when you hold your pencil toward the middle or the end. You end up with lighter strokes. It will be hard to get darker strokes when you hold your pencil like this. But now, see what happens when you hold your pencil closer to the lead. It will be very easy for you to get dark strokes like this. And maybe this might be helpful later in the future, but for now, we want our strokes to be light at the beginning stage. And even from the first layer, I am already defining the shadowed areas in the cheeks and also the highlights below the eyes. The next step now is to blend the shading, and I'll be using my tissue to blend. Simply fold your tissue paper and gently rub on the paper. You'll want to avoid doing something like this, that is going in back and forth motion. But instead, try this method of blending with circular motions, like you are moving the tissue paper in circles. This will help you make your shading smoother. Now, normally, after shading with the HB pencil, I would move on right away with my 2B pencil. But for some reason, I decided to shade once again with my HB pencil. If I'm being honest, I don't know what came over me, but it seems like I was afraid of going darker with a dark pencil. I know, right? Happens to the best of us. Anyways, I blend that layer, and like I predicted, I'm going now with my 2B pencil. You'll see that I am targeting the darker parts of the cheeks, that is the cheekbones and the jaw. What I want is to shade so that no matter the pencil I'm using, these parts will still appear darker. And of course, I still want to avoid shading over the highlights. While you shade, if you find that your shading isn't very smooth, it's most likely because you are shading using back and forth motions. Like we talked about with blending, you also want to try to shade using circular motions. That is a shade like you are drawing a bunch of circles on the paper. As I have done with the previous shading, I'm now going to blend again with my tissue paper. Normally, people will tell you to shade using blending stumps, but I haven't found much success with them. I much rather prefer using tissue. In fact, I haven't found any blending tool that is as smooth as the tissue. Now that the blending is over, can you guess which pencil I'll be using next? Of course, it's the 4B pencil. I'm still targeting the dark parts of the cheekbones and the jaw, but here's something that you want to avoid doing. Just because you are shading the dark parts, that doesn't mean that you are going to neglect the other areas of the drawings, like the midtones. If you don't shade other areas, this is what your drawing might turn out to be. So yes, by all means, make the dark and shadowed areas dark, but don't forget the midtones. And you will see me observing my words by shading the parts close to the nose and also the wrinkles in the cheek. And to top it all, I'm even using my 4B pencil to shade these midtones, which goes to show how dark you can take your midtones. But then again, don't go too dark with the midtones because I said you shouldn't overlook them. To help, still try to hold your pencil toward the middle or the end. You should already be familiar with the drill by now. After shading, what's the next thing that we'll do? Yes, of course, we'll blend with the good old tissue. So we take our tissue and we blend the shading. Okay, now pay attention because the happy days are over. This is the result we get after shading with the graphite. It's not bad, it looks fairly okay. But if you compare this with what we have on the reference photo, you can see that we still have a long way to go, at least in regards to the bottom of the jaw. This is why it pains me deeply in my heart to say this, but we have no other option. I'm forced to bring in the charcoal powder. I'm actually thrilled to use the charcoal powder. I love it so much. In fact, I've been holding myself back from using the charcoal powder so far. Get yourself a brush and dip it into the charcoal powder. Of course, you want to remove the excess powder on a piece of paper and then bring it to shade the skin. Now, even if you hate my voice and don't like to listen to anything I say, please, this time, for your own good, take note of this. Don't start to shade using full force with the charcoal powder. Start with the dark areas and hold your brush towards the end of the stick and blend very softly in circular motions. Then as you progress, you can now begin to apply more pressure on the brush. You'll notice that I am targeting the very bottom of the jaw since that is the darkest. In fact, for the jaw, the powder was not even enough. I had to go further in with my charcoal pencil to really create that dark shadow. Then I blended with my angle brush. And yes, even while I was shading the forehead, I still use the same method that I showed you now. That is, I shade with the graphite pencil and then I finalize with my charcoal powder. In any case, this is the final result of my Ariana Grande's drawing. You have to admit, while the shading and the skin tones are amazing, what actually makes this drawing stand out is the hair, the flow of the hair. Do this. Click the playlist on the screen now and you can gain insight into how I draw my hair. Watch that. Yes, that. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.